statistic about how many hours per
Toil.
The toil index?
Yeah, how many, yeah, how many
In
hours
1970, it was 42 hours that it,
per month?
yes, per month, to work.
And that was 1970?
That was 1970. To rent a house in a school district with an average quality, not high quality, but average. And then that went from 42 hours to 67 hours per month.
Any questions from that side? Oh, Crystal, yeah, I'm
I
sorry.
have a comment in response to why aren't we taking to the streets about health care? Today in Washington, D.C. and around the country, people did take to the streets. There was a major rally in D.C. about Medicaid and the cuts that have been happening at that level. And they happened all around the country. So
it's coming.
why aren't we hearing about it? It's another question, but it is happening. And the other thing to keep in mind is that Medicare does not cover medications in and of itself, and it does not cover long-term care.
That's right.
So Medicare in and of itself is not enough.
That's right.
Going the wrong way.
Many European countries have 18 months maternity or paternity leave at 80% salary. Long-term care covered by the state. And I think they do it efficiently. Once you add up everything that we have to pay out of pocket, we are right at the level of expense that the European states do very efficiently.
We pay
to the great
twice.
satisfaction of their citizens.
Clarification. Did I hear you say that you were suggesting as a solution more of the free market than the medical delivery system?
I'm saying that from my perspective, the mean doesn't hold. Either we need to move to a more European system where the government or national insurance payer acts as a single buyer to hold costs down, or we need to move to a more free market system so we have competition within the system.
Are you just saying, as far as you're concerned,
I'm saying the system that we have is broken. From my perspective, the system that we have is broken and not sustainable.
so which would you prefer of those solutions?
I think that a more European system would be a better long-term solution. If you look at the healthcare cost as a percent of GDP that the government is going to cost, you can actually make the case that some European systems are actually less quote-unquote socialist because the fraction that they spend on healthcare is less as a fraction of GDP than our government does. And so you can actually make an efficiency argument based on a European model healthcare system.
And many of them are not socialists at all. Non-profit insurance companies carry the policy.
There's like about 15 different systems.
Well, I would again say that there isn't such a thing as a free market in this country. And if you look at free market health care, instead of 50 million unemployed or uninsured, we'll probably have 150 million uninsured because the free market is not going to pick up the chronically ill. Who wants to take them when their costs are so outrageous? The free market is just going to discard them. In my opinion, that does not work, and it won't work.
I know of one country that tried the free market, actually, it was sort of a Republican plan in Singapore. And within 4 or 5 years, they had to switch to a special Medicare for the poor, or Medicaid for the poor Singaporeans. It simply did not work.
On medical care, I would make one comment. I've recently traveled in Australia and Switzerland. It was very nice to come through customs, and as they wave you farewell as you enter the city, they say, and remember, you're covered by our National Health Service. Yeah.
I've been taking notes as thoughts came to me, and I've let other people talk because I have a lot of things here. If I ramble on too long, somebody give me a hook or something. I had politics explained to me one time as a struggle between the selfish and the unselfish. And if I look at politics in that particular context, a lot of things make sense. Gary Trudeau in his Sunday Doonesbury comic has twice brought up the issue that there are some 400 families in the United States that control about half of the wealth, the total wealth of the country, largely in stocks and bonds, I understand. And if you view the so-called conservative viewpoint as trying to protect the family, keep their wealth, perpetuate it, and get more of it, then a lot of other issues do make a whole lot of sense. I now have relatives in Japan. Some years ago, Sam explained to me that in Japan, people have a lot more equality of income. Everybody at that time made about $30,000 a year. And there were exceptions to that, of course, but it made for a lot more civil society when you didn't have great disparity in wealth. They also had universal health care. Everybody has to pay into it at the rate of about $300 a month. But when my daughter-in-law had a son, she got 10 months of subsidized maternity leave to bond with the child, take care of it before she had to go back to work. A lot has been said in this country about capitalism, and it's sort of held up as a cherished icon. But there's nothing in the United States Code, in the laws, or anything like that that enshrines capitalism as the official economic system of the United States. And to say socialist is sort of like saying communist. It has a negative connotation. We have been conditioned to hear it that way. But the trouble with pure naked capitalism is that it often incurs public costs, but the profits are private to companies. If they can get away with polluting, it's no cost to them, it helps their bottom line, but it's a cost to everyone. In the 50s, the top tax rate, the marginal tax rate was at something like 90%. And you notice that the people who call themselves conservatives have been pushing for a flatter tax rate all the time. They recently lowered it from five tax groupings down to 3 because that was simpler and somehow it seemed fairer. But all the time that they're leveling that, they're slicing away at what the top people are making. In Reagan's day, the idea of trickle-down economics was touted, but wealth does not trickle down, it trickles up. You talk about people who create jobs, give the tax breaks to the people who create jobs. Well, the people who create jobs are making money off of everyone that's working for them. That's why they're in business. And so it just perpetuates more wealth to the people who create jobs. I've heard that there are 3 ways to create wealth. You can't get rich on your own, but you can become wealthy if you have people out working for you, if you have ideas working for you, or if you have money working for you. And for the people that are on the lower rungs, it's tough to have any of those things going for you, with the possible exception of ideas working for you. We were talking about rights and so forth. I heard, well, the question was, is there a right to life? And the answer that I heard was that there's no right to life because everything around us is alive, and we humans sort of treat ourselves as special. And the people who... Well, that's why I waited till everyone got... Anyone want to say anything more?
Also, we kind of getting past our time, so... Lula, you can say something?
I'm asking about who are the invisibles in this whole discussion? I mean, you had the economic indicator being predictor for those 9 social problems and such. But then throughout this whole discussion, there are some who are invisible. We look at whether it's elderly, people with disabilities, people with different, Native Americans, migrants. Sometimes that certain things here don't even get to the level of, it's at the lowest economic level, maybe it's even below that. Are there concerns being brought forward? Are there stories being heard? Are they part of this inequity concern? So sometimes it's a lot of it is invisibility.
So here you talk about the 46 million poor in the country, living in dire poverty.
I'll just make a point about illegal immigrants. I read this in the National Review, so
Yeah.
that's not a leftist magazine. Okay? One of the major writers there made some calculations about what we owe illegal immigrants. Every paycheck they get, Medicare and Social Security is deducted. These people will not be here to collect those things. The calculation was that we owe each one of these illegal immigrants $80,000 that they're not claiming. And they're doing work that nobody else will do. I read an article about a Georgia businessman who says that there are white unemployed people that refuse to take my jobs because they're not air conditioned. I'm forced to use Mexican workers because they are the only ones who will go out in the fields and pick my crop.
You think it's true?
Let me also make, let me
So
remind
there's
all
an
of us,
invisible
as BS there's no such thing as a free market. And there is no such thing as pure capitalism. In fact, if there was something, it went away with FDR. FDR used to talk about the second Bill of Rights. The first Bill of Rights being about civil liberty, and the second one about economics, about poverty, and those kind of the second Bill of Rights. So the pure capitalism, the one you're talking about, has never existed. But there is the model that this country has strived toward. This is what we teach in classes. Capitalistic economics, market economics, with all this, faults.
Do you teach the alternatives as well?
What's that?
Do you teach the alternatives as well?
Somebody else. You had a question.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I want to go back to healthcare one more time, because I really cannot, and we had, 3 years ago, we had, and I think it was a Congressman Lee, who came to speak to us, and I tried to speak to some of the people in the audience, some students, and speaking, and he knew I was coming from France originally, he recognized my accent, and I spoke about healthcare in France. And he said, what? You mean I have to pay? That was a student about 25 years old. He said, I would have to pay for someone else where I'm all right now and I'm paying my dues. And I said, yes, you may have to. I think that the American citizens don't understand that healthcare is attached to the job they have now. They may not have their job and they may not have healthcare. How do we share with them that perhaps one day they won't have a job and they won't have health care? And if you have a solution, I've tried with students and I think that makes sense.
Another huge inequality is why is health insurance attached to your job?
That's right,
Yeah.
that's what I'm asking.
We haven't had big companies and big employers. It's a fairly recent thing. 100 years ago, most of the people were private contractors. And now the model here now are the big companies, and you work and do all these things and you get health care benefits. But I'm not so sure that we don't need to go away from that. Can we be private contractors again? And why is our health care tied to some certain job? It should be available to all.
That should be important.
Yes.
Well, I just
I'm
was
sorry.
reacting to what Nicole was saying, and it connects with Rula's comment that we need to reconceive things in the idea of collective good versus individual good. But it really dawned on me how American my thinking was one time when I was living and working in Belgium, and and with paying into an insurance pot. And I remember sort of, you know, grumbling at a dinner party one time with Belgian friends that I hardly was making any money, and I was paying, you know, half of it to this retirement scheme, and I would never collect from that because I was only going to be there for a couple of years. And they said, well, it was retirement and health thing, and they said, well, that's not what insurance is about. That you know, it's healthy people pay for people who need care. And like they said, that's the most basic principle of what insurance is. I'm like, wow, for Americans, no. Insurance, the principle of insurance is you pay while you're healthy for yourself when you're going to be sick.
And Nancy?
Just kind of a corollary to what Sarah's saying. I recently read a book about a young American couple who went to Norway and delivered their first child there, and they were very reluctant to take advantage of the services and benefits afforded new parents and their infants. And the people in this village said, you take that, not because it's some special perk for you, but because we all care about the well-being of all of these children. And this is something that we want you to do for your child. So there is that sense of the whole.
We're running overtime. 8:30 was kind of our deadline. Personally, I don't care. We can keep on talking if you want to. I don't go to bed till later on, even though I should go to bed by then. So,
I have a last question for BJ. I mean, those banks are sitting on trillions. What are one or two or three things we could change to get that money released? Because we are a consumer economy. I mean, 70% of our economy revolves on consumption, people buying stuff, renting stuff, etc. So you mentioned one, the federal law that now says 140%. But is there something we could do, we could promote? Because without money, nothing's going to happen. Fixing the infrastructure, fixing healthcare, fixing whatever it is. How do we turn the money loose?
You can probably, you know, when the government says, we're going to make it so banks loan money to small business, we're going to give them all this money so they'll loan it out. Well, that didn't happen. I think they're probably telling us a lie. They don't tell you about that federally mandated loan policy that makes it so tight. And they'll justify that by saying, we need to be more careful with credit. Well, before, when you were creating jobs and it worked, you didn't say anything about that. You got yourself in trouble by making these crazy loans to people that didn't have income at all, because you didn't watch what you were doing. Again, I think you just have to put pressure on the government that this needs to change. It's your policy that's stopping this. Change it.
So Paul, how do you put pressure on the government to do that?
You're elected officials, and I know that's...
The final comment, let me give Sarah, is fundamentally, we in this society are not common good oriented. We are a nation built on, you know, rugged individualism. You know, you're at your mercy. The idea of common good, like FDR was always even more calming. Many people call him, you know, a communist, or at least quite pink. Right? So it's not easy, and that's the divide right now in this country. We are seeing between the Republicans, the Democrats, and the, you know, somebody's, I heard, let's liberate the economy. In other words, let's somehow unleash incentives for the individual to do everything. And the other side is talking about infrastructure and so many other things. So common good idea is not very pervasive, it's not very common.
But it's a Christian idea. It's a Christian idea.
Of course it's a Christian idea.
But it's a farming idea. If you have a farm, I mean...
If you go back to early Christianity, of course common good. You're your brother's keeper. So you got to care for everybody. But that went away way back when the idea of private property was also, you know, sold to St. Thomas Aquinas later on in his life. The private property notion is very much part of what capitalism is all about. And So the common good, it drives a lot of conflicts.
Can I have one last comment?
Yeah.
That was a big one. Because I'm always amazed how generous the American, the USA people are to charity, for if there is a farmer in trouble, all the farmers all around come. So why is it they can be so generous, but not if they're told to be?
Yeah.
That's the generation of the country we're in.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
By the way, any one of you have an idea for future social